In this episode of the Getting Rooted podcast, a lot of people understand their patterns and still feel stuck. They know why they overthink. They know why they procrastinate. They even know why they shut down or avoid things. But nothing actually changes. So the question becomes, if you're aware, if you understand yourself, why does it still feel so hard to do things differently?
Let's get rooted with Getting Rooted podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Getting Rooted. I'm your host, Jeanine Hansel-Frimpong, therapist and mental wellness coach. And I help women who feel overwhelmed reset their lives without burning everything down. And doing this by staying rooted internally and making small, sustainable changes. So, welcome. I want to be honest with you about something. Because there's definitely a difference between awareness and behavior change. And most people assume that once they have one, the other just follows. It doesn't. And here's what I had to learn from personal experience. Knowing why you do something is not the same as doing something different. Should I say that again? Knowing why you do something is not the same as doing something different. Because you can understand your patterns completely and still repeat them. And it's not because you don't care. It's not because you're not trying, but because awareness lives in your mind. And behavior change has to happen in real time. So, in the moment when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when everything in you wants to respond the same way you always have, that's where the actual work is, because you're doing something different. And in that gap between knowing and doing is exactly where most women get stuck, is in that gap. So this shows up in small ways too. So it's not just the big things, but in small ways. So you can know you're overwhelmed, but still keep saying, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, I can do that. And you can know you need rest, but you still push through the day, right? You can know something isn't working and still keep repeating it. I've been there too. I knew I was doing too much and needed to ask for help, but I was my own obstacle. I was getting in my own way. And it wasn't because of pride. It wasn't being so used to handling everything on my own. It was more that asking for help didn't feel natural. It didn't come to me naturally. And there was another season where I knew I really needed to slow down. I could feel it. My body was telling me, my emotions were telling me, but slowing down felt like falling behind. So what did I do? I kept going. And it's not because I didn't understand the problem, but it was because understanding it and actually doing something different are two completely different forms of addressing things, right? They're two completely different things. So in that gap is where we have to look about what do we do when we're in that space between knowing and doing. So let me ask you something honest. How many times have you said, I know why I do this, and then done it anyway? Because that's not failure. That's the loop. Awareness without interruption just becomes a loop. You have to interrupt the chain, right? You notice it, you name it, you think about it, but nothing actually changes because noticing isn't the same as responding differently. Insight on the other hand, is reflection, right? It helps you understand yourself. But change requires action. Let me say that again. Insight is reflection. So it begins to help you understand, okay, the why. Why are you doing this? But the concept of change, that requires action. That requires a plan. And so I'm going to talk to you about what gets in the way of that. Because what most people don't talk about is even when you know what to do differently, something in you resists it. Have anybody experienced that? Right? And that resistance isn't weakness, it's your nervous system doing what it was trained to do. And when you spent years operating in one way, right? Carrying everything, handling everything, never asking for help, your nervous system starts to treat that as safety. This is the norm. This is how we function, right? Even when it's exhausting, even when it's not working, even when you know better. So doing something different doesn't just feel hard, it can feel unsafe. And asking for help can begin to feel like losing control. I said the C word. We don't like to lose control, right? Slowing down can feel like you're falling behind. Setting a boundary, oh my goodness, can feel like letting people down. Oh, but if I do that, they're going to think I'm mean, or they're going to think that I'm not nice, or that I. Why are we so worried about what other people are thinking while you're over here struggling and suffering, right? But let me close the back door, as my dad would say. That's not a character flaw. On the other hand, it's a pattern. It's not a character flaw. It's a pattern that your nervous system has learned. Long before you had language to name it, you were already in this flow. You learned this, right? Because naming it is the first interruption. So instead of asking, why do I do this? I want you to start asking, what am I going to do differently? The next time this show up, how am I going to handle this? The next time this shows up, how am I going to say no? Because that shift from why to what is where behavior change actually starts. All right. I want you to think about this, because real change doesn't come from big dramatic shifts. Anybody ever made big dramatic shifts? Like you say, oh, I'm gonna go, like, beginning of the year, I'm gonna go, I'm sign up for the gym, and I'm gonna eat healthy. And how long does that last? Not even a week for some people. Some people might get to the end of the month, but a week is cutting it close, right? But real change comes from small, consistent changes. Like one different choice, one different response, one moment where you pause instead of reacting automatically. That's how momentum builds. So think about one pattern you're already aware of. Just one. Okay, you got it? And now ask yourself, what's one small way I can respond differently next time? Not perfectly, not forever, just once. Because when you change how you respond in one moment, you start creating a different pattern. So I explain this to my clients a lot of times by stating, like, think about a path, right? Think about a big field of grass and think about a path that has been walked over many, many times, right? That path looks very different than the rest of the grass. Like, where it starts and where it ends because it's walked over. It's not as high as the other parts, right? Because that is that path that you have created from point A to point B. Right? So this is how I do it. I go from here to there to get stuff done. And so now what I'm asking you to do is create a new path. right? Create a new pattern in this tall grass. So instead of going from north to south, let's try east to west. Let's try to create a new path that's going to interrupt the path that you've been on. Right. So that's what I'm asking you to do. So once you walk over that, it's going to take a while, right? It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to walk through some of the tall grass until you get it to a place where it's well worn in and you're like, oh, okay, this is familiar. I know what this is because I've been walking this for a while now, right? You're starting to create a different path, a different pattern. Okay. So that's what I invite you to do. So if you've been feeling stuck, even though you understand yourself, I want you to hear this clearly. That's not a discipline problem. That's not a willpower problem. That's what happens where awareness doesn't have anywhere to go. There's nowhere for it to go. Okay, now what do I do, right? So insight got you here, but it won't get you all the way through. The next step isn't more understanding. We've done that. It's one different choice. One moment where you pause instead of reacting. One time you ask for help instead of handle it on your own. One small thing that you do differently. You got to start there. And that's where the real change begins. Not in the breakthrough moment, in the next ordinary step, in the next ordinary moment. So, for example, if your phone rings and you have to answer right away, you got to check the message, you got to check the text message. What about you don't? As soon as it rings, you let it go to voicemail or you let the text message sit there for a while and you calm your body down. That's just one small thing. I'm not saying not to answer the text. I'm saying not to do it urgently, right? So taking a moment to breathe, regroup, get yourself together before engaging in whatever that conversation is, whatever the text message is, right? Because if you're ready to move from awareness to actual change, not just understanding yourself, but doing something different, that's exactly the work I do. And I want to invite you to check out the link in the bio because there's options there. There's things to help support you in making these steps and help coach you through this process. So I invite you to stay rooted in your truth and take care of your mind. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Digging in deep, getting at the truth, finding your peace at the lantern root, growing into a brand new you with Rooted.